Let's talk about reflective listening. Now, you may also hear this referred to as just reflections. So the act of reflective listening means that you're speaking a lot of reflections. And you may also hear this occasionally called active listening. The idea here is you're listening to a person and you are actively or reflectively saying back to that person what it is that you've understood. Why would we do that? Why would we repeat back to a person what he or she just said to us? Sometimes people tell me, I don't know, I feel a little strange about doing that. It might sound like I'm making fun of them. Well, there are a lot of good reasons to say back to a person what that person has just said to you. First of all, this is a listening skill rather than questions, which are an interviewing skill. We ask questions when there's some information we need from the client or the patient. So that is taking from the person and extracting what we want to hear or what we might feel we need to hear. That's an interviewing skill. Reflective listening is the way that we show someone we're right there with them. We're paying attention to what they're already saying. We're staying right where they are, not getting ahead of them and trying to drag them along. So this is a good skill for doing just that. Staying with the person and letting them know, I am listening to you. This is a way of conveying understanding. Now, very often people get lazy and they'll just say, I understand, I get it, yeah, I'm following you. Those are lazy statements because they don't prove that you understand. They actually sometimes have the opposite effect. Rather than helping a client feel understood, when the client hears you say, I understand, they tend to feel sort of dismissed, like you're trying to get them to shut up. Imagine or think of the last time you were maybe in a customer service kind of setting, and a customer service professional might say to you, yes, 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 I understand, I understand. Often that leaves us feeling kind of shut up, especially if the person does it with their hands up like this. I understand, I gotcha, I'm following you. When we do it with or without the hand gesture, it seems to convey enough out of you. I'm understanding what you're saying. Don't say anymore. So rather than just throwing away that line of, yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah, I'm following what you're saying. Reflective listening is a way of proving it. Reflective listening is a way of actually showing evidence that you understand. So you say back what you just heard to emphasize, I really am right there with you. This also allows an opportunity for clarification. Sometimes you think you're understanding, and then you say back what you've just heard and find out you totally misunderstood. It happens. We're human. And isn't it important, or wouldn't you think it's important, for the client to get the chance to say, oh, no, 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 that's not what I'm saying at all. Let me clarify. Because then we, as helping professionals, can move forward with accurate information. I also find that when we rely on listening and saying back what we've heard, doing this reflective listening technique, that it's less demanding on the client because they don't feel so interrogated. And I'm using this hand motion because sometimes when we go along with question, 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 clients start to feel like that spotlight is on them and we're interrogating them to wait until they can say something that makes us say, gotcha. So to reduce that feeling of an interrogation, sometimes it's important to just sit back and listen and say back what you've heard. And there's no other agenda except to show that I'm understanding you. And in that regard, it's less demanding of the client. I also find, and maybe this is a bit more anecdotal, that when I'm helping people learn the skill of reflective listening, they tell me that initially it's a lot of work because it's a little bit different than how we typically speak to people. So at the beginning, it's hard to learn this, but they say eventually it really is very relaxing in a client encounter when all I need to do is listen and say back what I've heard. Now maybe for the first time, I don't have to be thinking of, okay, this person's talking, but I have to think of what question I'm going to ask next. And what question will I ask after that? And I don't have to be doing this dual or triple process of listening and trying to think ahead and plan my next move. There is no move to plan. There is no thinking ahead to anything. My job is to listen to what the person is saying right here, right now, because I'm about to say it back. And if I'm not listening right here, right now, I won't know what to say back. So this forces us as practitioners and providers to stay in the moment. And it means that we only have to do one thing. All I have to do is listen. I no longer even feel tempted to do that thing where I'm listening and trying to plan and trying to think of what the last thing was they said. No, this is less exhausting for us because we're just doing one thing, just listening, getting ready to say it back. Now for this video, we're going to keep it simple and just talk about two basic types of reflections. There's a simple reflection and a complex reflection. In a simple reflection, we basically say back nearly exactly what the client said to us. You might change some words here and there, but the meaning remains the same. And with a complex reflection, you add a little meaning to what the client has said because it moves the conversation forward. If you've ever tried reflective listening and felt like you got kind of stuck, like the client said, "Oh, I'm tired today," and you said back, "So I think you're saying you're tired today." And it's like, this is not really going anywhere and it's kind of awkward. It's probably because you're leaning a little too much on the simple reflections. And I'm not saying they're bad. Oftentimes they're very powerful. But if you're using them so much that you're not moving the conversation forward, it starts to feel a little silly, where the person says, "Yeah, I'm still drinking heavily in the evenings." And the clinician says back, "Ah, so you're still drinking heavily in the evenings." And then the client looks at the clinician like, "It's what I just said. I don't know why you're just repeating me." It starts to feel strange. So if you're having that kind of awkward exchange with a client and you're feeling like, wow, this isn't really going anywhere, please try adding more complex reflections. Let's look at some examples. Maybe the client says, "I have a good sense of humor." And rather than just saying back, "Ah, okay, so you have a sense of humor," that would be a simple reflection. You could say, "Ah, so you know how to laugh at yourself." And listen, you could be wrong. The client might say, "No, I only laugh at other people." Okay, that's all right. It's not a requirement that you be 100% accurate. The idea here is you're showing the client what it is you've understood, and then the client gets the chance to say whether you were right or wrong. Maybe you could even say back to the person, "Oh, so you're saying your sense of humor has really helped you in life." And the client might say, "No, it gets me in a lot of trouble." Again, it's all right if you're wrong. It's not the point that you be accurate necessarily. You're trying to be accurate, but you may not be. We just learn what we've missed and we move on. Maybe the client says, "Oh, I really think I take on more than I should." You might respond back with something like, "You feel a lot of responsibility," or maybe you'd prefer a new way of doing things. Either way, this is a complex reflection. The first one, "you feel a lot of responsibility," is identifying the feeling that the person is conveying, right? So when someone says, "I take on more than I should," they're describing a behavior, and you're reflecting back what you are guessing their feeling is. And you might say, "I think you're feeling a lot of responsibility." It's up to the client to let us know if we were right about that, but this is our guess at the feeling, and that's a complex reflection. The next one that I already read was, "You'd prefer a new way of doing things." This is reflecting back an emphasis on what the person seems to be describing as the problem, right? Something's not going right here. I'm going to look at the next example. Maybe your client says, "Whew, I don't know what to do." It's really tempting for us to want to jump in and tell a person what to do, but that's not listening. Listening is hearing what they just said and showing that you understand. So if somebody says, "Gosh, I really don't know what to do," rather than telling them what to do, I might reflect back, "You feel like maybe you've exhausted your options, or maybe you're feeling kind of lost." And that's showing that I'm listening. Maybe a client says, "Well, I just can't do anything right." And again, it's tempting to want to correct that. It's tempting to want to say, yes, you can. You do lots of wonderful things. I saw you do that great thing the other day. It was fantastic. But that's not listening. That is correcting. That is telling a person how you feel is wrong, and I'm going to tell you how to feel. It just doesn't work that way. We don't get to tell people how to feel. If you want to show understanding, you might just say back to that person, you are so disappointed right now. And that shows that you're understanding, not that you are correcting them or challenging them or giving them advice. You are understanding where they are right now. And often that's all a person really wants.